Hi, Craig. Welcome back to the Free Speech Cage.
Hi, Max. Always good to be back here.
So, last time we talked about the Marines working within the country, but now Trump says he's going to invade Nigeria, which,
Well, he's threatening to invade Nigeria to protect Christians there. Why Donald Trump, of all people, has a special interest in protecting Christians, given what he is doing to anyone else in the world, including Christians who aren't Nigerian, is beyond me. But that raises the larger context of just how much adventuring Donald Trump is going to do with America as his tool.
yeah, I think, obviously, right in history, especially with Iraq, I don't know how you felt, but I always knew the weapons of mass destruction thing was just concocted.
Completely.
Right. Yeah. So, so he's in Venezuela saying he cares about these drug smugglers, which again is ridiculous. And then he's saying that the Christians in Nigeria. But do you think it's a little bit different now than it was before and concocting these excuses, which are just.
I think he and the entire Republican establishment, the regime, is panicking that he is going to truly be seen as the incompetent fool that he is. And the Republicans are trying to get all this other stuff done. They're looting the Treasury, they're looting public lands, they're changing the rules on stocks. All sorts of other super important things are happening, and we're distracted by this, that, and the other thing. Started with the Gulf of America. So maybe he'll invade. When I say he, I mean we will invade Nigeria. Maybe he will invade Venezuela. What it looks like an invasion, I don't know. Certainly Iraq, which I agree, that stuff was concocted. That was months of buildup, huge amount of personnel, allies, military supplies, the whole works. That's nowhere near what's going on in Nigeria. And Nigeria, by the way, is a huge country. You just don't lightly it's not, say, Grenada. You don't lightly invade a country like that on the other side of the world. And if you read his tweets about it, it's well, we're just going to go in there and kill and destroy it. Way harder to do in real life. But of course, he's never done anything in real life from a military standpoint. So he probably watches Rambo movies and think, well, that's what I can do.
Well, exactly. So Iraq, it took, I don't know, 6 to 9 months, I think, to get the full force over there. There's 100,000 soldiers or whatever. So down in Venezuela, I think they have maybe 10,000 Marines or various types of troops. There's no way you could invade a country like Venezuela with 10,000 people. They would. I'm not in the military, but I just don't see that's even remotely feasible. So what exactly is he doing down there?
Well, he's beating the drum, and of course there is some thought that the opposition, remember, she got the Nobel Peace Prize, the opposition might become an ally to those 10,000 or 20,000 or whatever people. But I think Trump has this Israeli type mentality in his mind. His regime has this fantastical idea that the United States can treat Venezuela, can treat Nigeria, can treat wherever like Israel treats Syria, like Israel treats Hamas, like Israel treats Iran, with these surgical, really powerful strikes that at least kick the ball down the road. Let me tell you what the United States cannot do. The United States cannot carry out a planned missile strike as a practice range thing on our own territory without bombarding the vice president's motorcade with misfire. So we are not that good. We're good. We're not that good. The idea that we could go into Venezuela or go into Nigeria and not find ourselves into something like a Black Hawk Down Somalia situation where instead of having a helicopter that goes down, we have an entire Marine battalion that can't get off the beach or something like that. All of a sudden, you realize it's way harder to get out of these things than it ever was to get in. But at that point, it's too late.
Yeah, I think Black Hawk Down was a great movie. It should be required watching right now. But yeah, it's just, just even recently, I always point out that when they're doing the Operation Guardian Protector or whatever it was with Yemen, that the aircraft carriers were staying 200 miles away from Yemen. And even that distance, some missiles are getting so close that the aircraft carrier would try and do a maneuver, and these guys are trying to bring the plane, down below deck, and it just slides off the deck. They can't control it because it's just not ready for it. And so I just don't see how the military or the ship, same thing. I think the Truman in the Suez Canal, just on the other side, was hit by another cargo ship. So create all this damage. Now, if that cargo ship had been loaded with bombs, it would have been game over, right? And I think that admiral or whoever was in charge of that ship was relieved, a few months later. But yeah, I mean, it's just we live in this alternate universe, like you point out. During Iraq, I didn't agree with it, but I thought that the way the military was behaving was, made sense, was logical, professional. But now I just see that it's like a toy army to whoever is in this Trump regime, back and forth.
We've got this idea, we fetishize the military, and we especially fetishize special forces, Navy SEALs, Army Rangers, Marines, units that have a history of going in, shooting things up, and then succeeding. That's sort of the myth we've told ourselves. But in real life, it doesn't always work that way. We just found out during the first Trump term that a group of Navy SEALs was discovered off of North Korea and wound up killing a bunch of North Korean fishermen and puncturing their lungs so the bodies would take longer to discover. So we are not always successful, and the bigger the operation, the more complicated it is, the more likely something can and will go wrong. And when that happens and the aircraft carrier can't turn out of the way fast enough, or whatever the analogy might be, then you're stuck with real life physical consequences on the ground. And once you have people stuck on the ground or stuck in the water, things ratchet up hugely and it becomes entirely unpredictable and dangerous. And I just don't think Donald Trump and his regime understand just how dangerous this is.
Right, yeah, I think by the way, my theory about that North Korean effort, I think that was leaked by people in the military that basically wanted to send a message to Congress, the Senate, whatever, to say, hey, just like you say, we have limited skills, and even the limited things that we do can really go south in a bad way. And so any thought about doing these military adventures, from the seat of your pants, or shooting from the hip, is just not going to work. So I guess that's my question. Like, you're in the Marines, like, what avenues can the Marines, they're not supposed to be political, but what avenues can they use to basically wake the Congress and the Senate up that we're in serious trouble? And are they doing anything like that right now?
I don't know what they're doing. I know some very courageous military officers and whatnot have said this is wrong. Some retired ones have as well. The tendency in the military is to sort of do what you're told, but when what you're being told to do is patently illegal, it's time for senior officers and senior staff NCOs and so forth to be vocal about saying, no, this isn't right. If they lose their pensions, they lose their pensions. If they get in trouble, they get in trouble. The cost of being silent is very, very likely to be Americans and other people getting killed in an illegal and unnecessary war. And we've seen this movie before, by the way. We saw it when Lyndon Johnson bombed the North Vietnam. We saw it when President Nixon illegally invaded Cambodia and Laos. This stuff doesn't end well. We think, man, this is going to be a knockout punch. There's no such thing as a knockout punch in a real war.
Yeah, I mean, I think it looks very scary because you're saying, okay, well, we don't want it to, that, and you said this the last time, that, okay, well, hopefully the military will not take on orders that are illegal. But it's already happened in our government with what Trump is doing, the Trump regime is doing with Congress and Senate. So they've already just been, so I don't see why it wouldn't happen in the military. Okay, yeah, there'd be a few that would be relieved of command and fire, but ultimately the military will do what they said because we already have Congress and Senate doing things that the Trump is and his whatever crooks are doing. So yeah, I just don't see any. It looks bleak to me.
It looks bleak to me as well, Max, and I think it's not fair to look at the military and say, hey, you guys, you can't do that. You stop it. We had No Kings 2. We had No Kings 2.1. And then what happens? Everyone goes back home and watches the World Series on Fox. So you're some major in the Army or the Space Command or whatever, and you look around and you see all your neighbors having barbecues and watching the World Series and living a normal life, and somehow you're supposed to take the heat for decisions that you think are illegal when clearly so much of what is going on is illegal, and we're just sitting on our asses letting it happen. That's not fair to the military. Downside of being in the military, though, is that major is going to be directly responsible for someone going into harm's way that should not, for damage being done, for people getting hurt or killed. That's a little bit different than simply watching the World Series and not protesting the fact that our treasury is being looted.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to get into any happy place with this conversation. So I guess I'm just going to say thanks for coming.
It's, well, you know, the world's not always been a happy place, Max. But I will see you soon, and thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming. Talk
Bye-bye.
to you later.